Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm going to be doing a TG deck profile. So I'm really excited this week guys, because I actually had help from one of my patrons over in the DarkArmedDuelist Discord server to build this. So I got to give a quick shout out to Chibi Gohan for helping me come up with the exact numbers for this deck. I'm really excited to show you guys this deck because it can summon out some of the most powerful synchro monsters in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like your copies of TG Halberd Cannon, which is an insanely powerful boss monster. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next to become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name searched in a single video, getting a signed card to mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test hands. And definitely give Chibi Gohan some love down in the comments down below for all the advice he gave me on this particular deck. So let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of TG Serpent. TG Serpent is a great 3-of in this particular deck, because if this card is normal or special summon, then you get to target a level 4 or lower TG monster in the graveyard, and special summon that monster, but its effects are negated. Basically giving you a really awesome card on your side of the field to help link summon into your copy of Needle Fiber, and even going into some synchro plays with this particular deck because it's a level 4 tuner monster. It has also a really neat effect that you can banish this card from the graveyard and then target a TG monster that you control and increase or reduce its level by 1, helping you level manipulate into the exact level that you need to go into your plays. We then play 3 copies of TG Warwolf. This card is a great 3-of in this deck as well, because when a level 4 or lower monsters is special summoned to your side of the field, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. And then during the end phase, if this card's in the graveyard because it was destroyed on the field and sent to the graveyard this turn, you get to add a TG monster from your deck to your hand. We then play 3 copies of TG Booster Raptor. This card is a neat 3-of as well, because it has the ability that if you control a TG monster, you can instantly special summon this card from your hand, and you can only special summon this card once per turn this way. And once per turn during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was destroyed on the field and sent to the graveyard this turn, you can add a TG monster from your deck to your hand, which is a pretty good effect just to give you an additional search in the deck. We then play 2 copies of TG Gear Zombie. I did consider actually bumping this card to 3, but there's another card that I'm playing in this particular deck, is why I'm just playing 2 copies of it. But this card has a really neat effect that you get to target 1 TG monster you control, special summon this card from your hand, and then the targeted monster loses 1,000 attack, which isn't that big of a deal for this particular deck, because you're basically just trying to get 2 monsters on your field to go into your copy of Needle Fiber, and then finally climb into your copy of Trident Launcher, so you can go into all sorts of different plays. We then play 2 copies of TG Drillfish. Drillfish is a 2-of to me because this card has a neat effect. They can attack your opponent directly for 100 damage, and if all monsters you control are TGs, minimum 1, you can special summon this card from your hand. And when a TG monster you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target a monster your opponent controls and destroys it, which is pretty good, so this card can attack directly and then destroy a monster. We then play a single copy of TG Grub Tank. I have bumped down Grub Tank down to 1 in this particular build, because if you control, or if this card you control is used as a synchro material for a TG monster, you can treat it as a non-tuner or a tuner. And if this card is sent to the graveyard as a synchro material for a TG monster, you can special summon 1 TG token that's an Earth level 1, attack 0, defense 0 to your side of the field in attack position, which is pretty good because it just gives you additional monsters to use for synchro summoning. We then play 3 copies of Red Resonator, which is why I'm actually just playing the 2 copies of the Gear Zombie. This card is a great 3-of in the deck, because when you normal summon it to your side of the field, you get to special summon any level 4 or lower monster from your hand, which is going to give that additional monster in your hand to your side of the field. That's going to let you go into that copy of your Needle Fiber to then go into Trident Launcher. We then play a single copy of Miscellaneousaurus, because we do play the level 1 Booster Raptor in the deck, so you can banish this card from the graveyard and then immediately special summon a Booster Raptor from the deck. We play 3 copies of Psy Reflector. Psy Reflector is a great card for the deck to be able to go in for all sorts of different synchro plays, because it has the ability, if this card is normal or special summon, you can add an Assault Mode Activate, or 1 card that specifically lists Assault Mode Activate in its text from your deck to your hand. And then it also has the ability that if you activate the effect, that you can reveal any Assault Mode Activates in your hand, and then you get to target 1 monster in your graveyard that specifically lists Assault Mode Activate in its text, except another copy of itself, and if you do, increase the level by 1 to 4 of that monster when it's summoned to your field, which is pretty good good just to be able to go all the way up to a 7, or a synchro monster, or an 8 synchro monster is just really good. 9, whatever you need, this card is going to let you level manipulate to the exact level that you need, so you can go in for those really good plays. We then play a single copy of Assault Beast, because Assault Beast is really good to be able to discard from your hand to the graveyard and search off your copy of Psy Reflector, so then you can reborn it from the graveyard after you discard it to add your Assault Mode Activate from your deck to your hand. I really like this card as a one of in here because it just helps out in all sorts of different plays with that copy of the Psy Reflector to go into some really, really neat combos, because basically all you have to do is normal summon out your Psy Reflector, search a copy of Assault Beast, discard the Assault Beast, and then search your copy of Assault Mode Activate. Once you do that, you can then basically synchro or link these two together for a copy of Needle Fiber and then go for full combos there, and it's really helpful to go in with these two cards in this particular deck. We then play the same copy of TG Halberd Cannon Assault Mode. I wanted to play one copy of this in the deck because it's very easy to summon to your side of the field in this particular build. You will sometimes run into instances where you will draw into it, but in those instances you can just play regular TG, but summoning this card to your side of the field is just absolutely insane. This card is a great boss monster for the deck because it can't be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned with Assault Mode Activate, and you can only use each of the following effects of this card once per turn. Then when your opponent would summon a monster's quick effect, negate the summon, and if you do, banish that monster and all special summon monsters your opponent controls, which is just crazy on a 4,500 attack point monster. And when this card is on the field, is destroyed, then you get to target one TG Halberd Cannon in your graveyard and special summon it, ignoring its summoning conditions. Now, the reason I'm playing this in the deck is because it's so easy to summon with your copy of your Psy Reflector and your Assault Beast, but you can just play regular TG without summoning this card in any particular combo in the deck, but when you do get to summon it, it's pretty much game. We then play 3 copies of Psyframe Gear Gamma, because Psyframe Gear Gamma, we do have a lot of search cards in this deck that you're going to be using first before you even summon a monster in this particular deck. So this card comes in very handy to be able to stop your opponent from hand trapping you, while also giving you a tuner and a non-tuner on the field to be able to link summon into that copy of your Needle Fiber and even climb into some level 8 synchro monsters. We then play a single copy of Driver for the copy of Gamma, which rounds out all of our monsters that we are playing in this particular deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is a really good card that's just going to stop our opponent from hand trapping us. So I really like this card as a one of in here to be able to just stop the opponent from hand trapping us. One copy of 1-for-1, because this card lets us special summon level 1s from the deck by sending a card from our hand to the graveyard. One copy of Tinky, because we can only play one Tinky and it searches a Beast Warrior from the deck to our hand. One copy of Resonator Call, which searches our red Resonators, being essentially a 4th copy of Resonator. One copy of our Monster Reborn, because it's going to let us extend our plays in this particular deck, which is why I play this card as a one-of. 2 copies of Emergency Teleport. Emergency Teleport lets us special summon out our Psy Reflector from the deck, which is super helpful in this particular build. 2 copies of World Legacy Succession. World Legacy Succession lets us target a monster in the graveyard and special summon it to a zone link monster points to, which is usually going to be our copy of Trident Launcher that we're going to be using with this card. And then 3 copies of Fossil Dig, which searches our dinosaur monsters from our deck to our hand, like Miscellaneousaurus, and Booster Raptor, which is super helpful to be able to grab those cards from our deck to our hand, which is pretty much it for the spell cards. Basically a bunch of revives and searches, which is really cool, which is why we play the copies of our Psyframe Gear Gammas in the deck, because you can basically stop your opponent from hitting you when you activate the copy of 1-for-1 Fire Formation Tinky and the Resonator Calls, and then all of these down here in the bottom row, except for the copy of World Legacy. They're really important to go off in this deck to get your searches, so basically the copies of Gamma protect these cards. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing a single trap, and that is the 1 copy of Assault Mode Activate for the chance that you might actually get to go into your copy of TG Assault Halberd Cannon. It's a really, really amazing card to summon to your side of the field, but this card basically lets you tribute your copy of Halberd Cannon to go into its Assault Mode version, so you just play the 1 copy of this card. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of TG Halberd Cannon. Halberd Cannon is a great level 12 boss monster monster for the deck, that you're going to primarily be using this card to go into that copy of the assault mode version of it. But it's a really neat card if you just summon it at your side of the field. It takes a synchro monster that's a tuner synchro monster plus 2 non-tuner synchro monsters to summon this card. Basically kind of like Quasar Dragon or Blazar Dragon. And it has the ability that this card cannot be special summoned except by synchro summon, and once per turn, when this card is face up on the field, you can negate the summon of a monster and destroy it, which is a pretty good effect to be able to just stop a monster from being summoned. And when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can select a TG monster in the grave and special summon it. So if you go all the way into that copy of the assault mode version of this, it will climb back down to this, and then this will actually replace itself again with another TG monster if it does get removed or destroyed, which is pretty good. We then play a single copy of Blade Blaster. Blade Blaster is a good card to play as a one of in here because it takes a tuner synchro and a non-tuner synchro to summon it. And when an opponent's monster, or when an opponent activates a spell or trap that targets this card, then you can send a card from your hand to the graveyard to negate the activation of that effect. And once per your opponent's turn, you can remove from play a TG monster from your graveyard and remove this face-up card from the field from play, which basically lets it dodge cards that you might want to protect it from, which is really helpful. And then during the next standby phase, especially on this card that was removed by its own effect. We then play a single copy of the Star Dragon TG Izzy, which is a really good card. Like, I really like this card in this deck as a one-up. It does take a synchro monster and a non-tuner synchro monster to summon this card, and when a monster effect is activated, you get to target a monster that you control, and quick effect, you get to banish one tuner monster from a graveyard and negate the activation. I usually go into this card over the Blade Blaster a lot in this particular build, and if you do, you destroy the card, and you can only use the effect of this card once per turn, that when an opponent's monster declares an attack, negate the attack, or during your opponent's turn, if this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you contribute to synchro monster and special summon it back. This card is a great one of in this deck though. We did play a single copy of Baron de Fleur because it's an additional negation and it's a really good card. If you don't have the, you need a budget option for this card, you can change it out for Satellite Warrior, which is another option for you guys. We then play a single copy of Borreload Savage because it gives us additional negations, which is a really good thing for this deck. One copy of Omega for the Driver Gamma package. One copy of Hyper Librarian because this card is going to be the first synchro monster out of your extra deck, so you can start drawing cards. One copy of Wonder Magician because it is a tuner monster as well as being a synchro monster, so it helps us climb into additional cards, and it's just a great card to summon to your side of the field. One copy of Power Gladiator because it's an additional card that we can summon to our side of the field that's a level 5 synchro monster, and it's TG as well. Two copies of TG Star Guardian, which is one of the best cards in the entire extra deck because it lets us once per turn during our opponent's main phase, quick effect, immediately this card resolves, you get to synchro summon using this card you control, and it also has the ability that if this card is special summoned, you can target a TG monster in the graveyard and add it back to your hand, and during the main phase you can special summon a TG monster from the hand, which is a really great effect for this card to be able to do. We then play just a single copy of the Dragonfly. Dragonfly is a level 2 synchro monster, so it helps us climb into our copies of the Halberd Cannon really easily in this deck. Two copies of Trident Launcher as well. Trident Launcher is a card that you're trying to go into all the time because if this card is link summon, you can special summon 3 TG monsters, one from your hand, deck, and graveyard in defense position to zones this card points to, and also you can special monsters for rest of turn except for TG monsters, which is not that big of a deal because the majority of the stuff that we're playing the extra, except for Baron, Borreload, and Cyframe, is basically all TG monsters, so you don't play that many in the deck anyway, so it's not that big of a deal of a restriction. And then we play a single copy of Needle Fiber so we can climb into the Trident Launcher because you can make this card and then special summon a tuner from the deck, the exact one that you want to special summon back off the Trident Launcher, and then basically you go in for Trident Launcher, which is super easy because you just have to use 2 effect monsters plus any TG monster. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it, and definitely shout out to Chibi Gohan for giving me the advice for this deck, because this deck is a really amazing deck, and I had a really good list for this, but the advice that he gave me was just so good to be able to go in for some really good cards in this deck. So really quick shout out to Chibi Gohan. Thank you so much, man, for the advice that you gave me for this deck, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, guys. Hit the bell there so you can come part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.